When I was around 12, I asked one of my teachers, geography teacher, something that I had noticed about how, for example, in South America, the three richest countries are the three that are furthest from the equator. Uruguay, Argentina, Chile. They're furthest away from the equator, and they're also the richest. They still are the richest to this day. Uh, in Europe, the same thing happened. The Nordics are notoriously known for being wealthy. Germany is known for being wealthier than like Italy and Spain. Just the northernmost you go, the richer it is. In North America, same thing. Canada being richer than Mexico, and then overall northern states like New York or New Hampshire or Massachusetts, for example, being richer than say Mississippi or Louisiana, etc. Uh, and this kind of goes for every region in the world, really, where the further you are from the tropics, the more likely it is that your country's developed. There are exceptions, but it's an amazingly sound rule. And even within the same country, like I said, those rules also apply. In Brazil, the southern states are furthest from the equator. They're a little less hot, or at least less tropical, and they're also the wealthiest. So it works on a local or at least regional level as well. And Australia is obviously an exception to that. I'm in Cairns right now, and I find it quite interesting that it's so clearly tropical. I mean, it's so hot and so humid, and well, from what I know, it's like that all the time. But it's still Australia, and you see it quite clearly. Where if you go to most tropical countries, like in Brazil, for example, or in Asia, you can feel that they're underdeveloped. You can feel a certain lack of infrastructure or a certain uh, confusion around rules or bureaucracies or etc. Whereas here, you're in Cairns, but things work pretty much effortlessly. The streets are nice. Everything's paved. They have nice gardens. They have well, nice salaries as well. Pretty much on par with the rest of Australia, which is well, really high. And even if you go south, obviously, if you go to Melbourne or Tasmania, uh, I wouldn't be able to call them exactly tropical, but Australia overall, from Sydney and up, from Perth and up, it's overall a hot, warm country, and it is a hot and warm country that's actually wealthy. So it is truly probably the one exception to this rule, except for maybe like Singapore, for example. Uh, Maybe obviously in history there have been times where there were tropical countries that were fairly wealthy comparatively at the time, but at least in the last 100 years, Australia has been pretty much the sole representative. And I don't really have any theories as to why that is. I have theories as to why tropical countries are not that wealthy overall, which is that they don't need, like cultures in those countries don't need to learn to sacrifice the present for the future. Because if you're in winter, for example, somewhere, you definitely do need to well prepare for it. If you have like a winter like Norway or Canada or Russia or South Argentina, where it's really cold, it's really snowy, you need to prepare yourself for it. And so culturally, there's a more of a mindset of sacrificing the present for the future because you know you're gonna be scarce in resources. And then obviously that requires more building of infrastructure and connections and more complex chains and all that. Whereas if you're in a tropical country, the weather doesn't change as much. And well, even if it's really hot, uh, heat kills less than cold in that sense, by far. Like I could be out and about like so in 40-degree weather, but I couldn't be out and about in minus 40-degree weather. So uh, I have this theory that in general, countries that are further away from the equator have to, they end up becoming wealthier because they have to, because they can't afford to live in a fucked up house during winter, or to not be able to store food, or to not be able to like make good, thick, quality clothes. And then obviously that just ends up spreading to everything overall. Like I said, Singapore is an exception, Australia is an exception, and there's exceptions on the other end as well, like Russia. Uh, it is supposed to be, it would have been supposed to be really wealthy, but it's not. Even though considering Russia was communist for so long, it's amazing that they're not poorer than they actually are. Uh, some countries in Eastern Europe, it's more or less the same thing. For a long time, they were also poor, even though they were cold. But as soon as the Red Wall broke, uh, they gradually ended up becoming developed as well. Uh, But yeah, it's very interesting, which is also, I guess, one thing that attracts so many people to Australia, because so many times you have to be willing to give up on salary for weather, or to give up on good weather for salaries. And here you don't. Like you can still have some of the highest salaries in the world, especially for lowish level workers, uh, with a reasonable tax system if you consider like other options, like in Europe, for example, and with good weather. It's like such a no-brainer. And in that sense, Australia could really be considered like a one-of-a-kind paradise. Uh, another another place is, I guess, pretty similar to this is California, where or Texas or Florida, really, because they're still in the U.S. They've been getting wealthier and wealthier, even though obviously on average the south of the U.S. is poorer than the north. There's plenty of states in the south now that have been getting richer, and they have well decent weather as well, depending on how you like it. And they're also another exception. But the U.S. is obviously much harder to legally move to than Australia. Australia has a much more comprehensive immigration system, and so yeah, in a way, it really is like a little piece of heaven on earth. Well, see you around. I hope to see your comments down below. Bye bye.